So in this recording, we are going to be talking about marine reptiles and birds, and we're going to use as our backdrop for that the chapter 11 from the Cengage Intro to Biology textbook, 4th edition. So for this section, here are some different key concepts that you should be able to take away from this, and I'm just going to scroll through these pretty quickly, and you can circle back to them if you want to later. So, marine reptiles have been around for a really long time, like 100 million years or so. And in my opinion, they are going to outlive the mammals. They were here way before, and because of their amazing adaptations, they will be here long afterwards. So there were a lot of things that allowed reptiles to come from the sea and onto land. Some of those were like a really tough, scaly skin and a willingness to have a very varied diet, the ability to lay eggs, and then those adaptations that helped them on land also helped some of the land dwelling ones to return to the sea. So we are going to go through some of those adaptations as we talk about that today. So one of those adaptations was the amniotic egg. So in the amniotic egg, and this is also just like a chicken egg, although right now we're talking reptiles, you will have a developing fetus, and that fetus will have an umbilical cord that is tied to a yolk sac. So the yolk sac has all the nutrients. So normally the developing baby would have an umbilical cord that attaches to its mom, and her food could live feed the baby while the baby grows. Now inside the egg, the mother still gives the baby a gift of nutrients, but in the form of a yolk sac. So when you break open a chicken egg, there is that bright yellow yolk that is a very high nutrient rich food source for the developing fetus, which is here in the amnion. Also in the egg is the allantois. The allantois is connected to the fetus for waste. And in a chicken egg, this is also there. However, keep in mind that the allantois is always empty in a regular standard chicken egg that you would get from the store because it is not fertilized. So because there is no developing fetus inside, there is also no waste from the fetus inside. And then also in the chicken egg, there is a chorion, which is a place and often a little gap for air, because this is an organism that is alive. It's a developing animal, and so it's going to have cell respiration. Remember that all organisms, including plants, will have cell respiration. And because of that, it needs to get rid of carbon dioxide and it needs to take on oxygen to survive. So the egg actually is porous, the shell is porous, and it will be able to release carbon dioxide and take in oxygen. The airspace and the chorion help make that happen. So this egg in general allowed for the organism to be able to develop its young a little bit longer before it just was out in the open and in the rest of the world. So prior to this, fish and other organisms in the ocean were just kind of spewing out this egg and sperm, and in some cases it would turn into a larval stage and develop from there. Instead of going from that level of underdevelopment, these eggs allowed the organism to really develop their young so that it came out in a more ready state for the world than a larva. So some organisms will come out of the egg and they're ready to go. Some still need some parental care and growth and development, but either way, that's further along than just egg, sperm, or larva alone. Okay, so other things that helped reptiles is that they have a very advanced circulatory system, marine reptiles. And here's a crocodile video by SciShow, why crocodiles have an extra hole in their heart. Interestingly, crocodiles, for example, will have an extra valve that shuts off the blood flow to the lungs, so that if there is enough oxygen in the rest of the crocodile, and it doesn't need to come up for air, the blood with enough oxygen in it will keep circulating around its body. When it starts to get really high in carbon dioxide and low in oxygen, the valve will open. It will allow the blood to get pumped to the lungs again, which will force the animal to come up and take a breath. So while it has enough oxygen, it'll actually bypass that need to come up and get more air. Then they also have skin that's covered with scales. And as we talk about marine reptiles, they are the largest living reptiles. They generally like to eat fish. In areas that they live, like Australia, they will actually live near the shore and eat little things around in that area. They do like to come up on land and be in water. They are not really a danger, though, out in deeper water. They tend to want to stay near the shore. Additionally, they have a salt gland that will get rid of excess salt, and that is located for them on their tongue. The females take about 10 to 12 years to reach sexual maturity, where the males are sexually mature in about 16 years. The females will elevate their nest to keep them dry and away from like decay, and they will lay 40 to 60 eggs per clutch. That's really, really big. And it takes about 3 months for those eggs to hatch. Here's a really cool video from Touche, Gator Growl. Although this might be like an alligator, it still shows you what crocodile sounds are like, and they're very good at vocalizing. I want to point out too that they're also awesome at having good navigational skills. There are different crocodiles that have been purposely relocated hundreds of miles from where they were captured because it wasn't a good spot for a crocodile to be. And those same exact tagged crocodiles have made their way back hundreds of miles to the place where they were originally taken from. So how this is happening, scientists aren't altogether sure. Here's a cool video from BBC. Saltwater crocodile defends her nest, showing you how strongly a female will defend her nest. She does stay with it till it hatches, and during the day she will leave to go get food, but she'll sit there and defend the nest while the babies are growing. Okay, sea turtles, a lot less intimidating. There's 7 species that inhabit the world's ocean. Their shell actually is something that fuses with their bones. So their bones integrate into their shell. The outside of their shell is composed of keratin. It's very like lightweight. The inside is a spongy bone, so it helps them to actually float. But when these shells get crushed or broken, there are different rescues that will now use things like 3D printing to try to help support the animal. But often there is a degree of paralysis because this is their spinal cord. So the outer shell on top is curved like the letter C. So I always remember that's called the carapace. You can see that outer piece, and underneath is a flatter piece called the plastron. Leatherback turtles actually don't even have a shell. They just have their leathery skin. That's why they're called leatherbacks. It's super illegal to own any piece of like turtle shell. So just as a side note, turtles are animals that go in the water and on land. Generally, marine sea turtles like the water the most, but they'll be on the land for a little bit of time. But tortoises are completely different. Tortoises, like in Southern California, there's the endangered desert tortoise, and that tortoise will only ever just be on dry land. It's never going to go into a pond or something like that. Here's a really cool life history video from Omar at Museo de la Ballena. And I actually took this video with Omar. He was a docent working at the museum. He does a great job with introducing the life history of sea turtles. I highly recommend it. And he is in La Paz, Mexico, still working on that. So sea turtles, again, are buoyant. They have fatty deposits and spongy bones. Their fatty deposits, interestingly, the green sea turtle actually doesn't look that green, but they're actually a vegetarian, and they actually have a green fat from all the greenery they eat. Their fat is actually green, which is why they're called a green sea turtle. Their front fins are shaped like flippers so that they can paddle really far and be as efficient as possible. And their back limbs are used for like steering, like a rudder, and digging nests. Okay, sea turtles are generally total introverts. They do not ever want to be together. They can stay submerged for up to 3 hours, and their whole life is alternating between sleep and eating. 3 hours of sleep, and then they'll eat for a while, and then they'll go back to sleep. So they can stay on the bottom for about 3 hours, and I have seen them crashed out like this on the floor of the ocean. I have seen them just like this inside of corals, just completely knocked out, or most often like a giant coral bommy and hiding up underneath that coral bommy. Just so everything leaves them alone, and they're always by themselves. Like, leave me alone, except like in this gif when they come together to mate. And you can see this female here, like, why am I having to swim around and do all the work? Just so you know, it's very, very, very illegal to get anywhere near a sea turtle in the water or on land. You should never photograph with them. You should not touch them in the water. You shouldn't try to take pictures or selfies with them. It's highly illegal, and there are people that will bust you on that. So try to stay away from them. But we do have them here in Southern California. I've seen them in various parts of the world. So they have this beak-like structure for eating, and you can see this really cool video in National Geographic where a sea turtle just devours a jellyfish like spaghetti. It is awesome. I mean, it just rips this jellyfish apart, and it can do that because it has a heavily lined digestive tract, so it never even feels the stingers as it goes down. And you'll see a bunch of other little fish feast off of what's left over there. And salt comes out of their eyeballs. They concentrate the salt in a gland near their eyes, and that extra salty water will come out of their eyes. So a lot of times people on beaches will go, oh, look at that sea turtle, it has like an eye infection. No, it's perfectly healthy, and it's doing what it's supposed to do, which is getting salt out through its eyes. So when they come together to mate, the males will often bite at the females, and here's one biting her neck and face, and like, oh, hey, you wanna mate? And she's like, why are you biting me? So she will decide yes or no about mating with that male. But interestingly, this is not a monogamous relationship. She will actually mate with multiple males and keep the sperm inside of her all together for multiple males, and she will allow it to fertilize her eggs when she is ready. So that's an interesting life process. When she comes to land, she will always come back to her own birthplace. If her own birthplace is destroyed, she will often not lay her eggs. So it's very important that her birthplace is protected when she has the eggs and she's ready to lay them. She will usually lay her eggs at night for safety, and a female can lay several clutches where she'll lay a whole nest, then go back to the water, and then come back on shore and lay a whole nother nest. The nest temperature is highly important. 29.9 is the special number. At 29.9 degrees Celsius, if the temperature is above that, the entire nest will be female. If it's below 29.9, the entire nest will present as males. So this has been a problem as we've seen beaches experience climate change, where certain beaches have gotten hotter. They have seen a huge increase in the number of female sea turtles, which doesn't seem like it would be that big of a problem because they're the ones that carry the eggs, and males can reproduce with multiple females. However, it's become such a tip that it's becoming problematic, and we need to have like genetic diversity where it's not just a few daddy turtles of all the babies. So there have been some highly guarded research projects where you have to get out and get proper permitting and things, but people that have gone out and made it a project to go and cool the nests, keep them shaded, spray water on them in a very controlled, safe way that does not injure the eggs. Here's a video, National Geographic Wild Sea Turtle Mating Melee. I recommend that one just to see the whole mating process. It's very interesting. When the babies are born, like this little one here, it will attenuate to the brightest thing it sees in the sky. So they usually come out in the middle of the night, but this is one that you can see is coming out first thing in the morning, or maybe it's coming out early in the night and the sun's going down. I'm not sure which way, depends on what continent this is happening on. However, that baby is steered towards the brightest thing in the sky. This becomes a problem if there are things like street lights and it's popular beaches and they have those street lights, then the babies can like attenuate towards the street light and then start walking towards a parking lot. Obviously, this kills the baby and it's a huge problem. So in a lot of places where they have nesting turtles, they have stopped allowing that. Right now, the survival rate is about 1 in every 1,000 turtles actually survive and make it to adulthood. They think before humans were around them that the survival rate was more like 1 in every 100. So that's definitely a decrease from what they believe it was before. So females, how are they navigating back to their birthplace? Scientists actually don't know. They don't know if this was smell, taste, Earth's magnetic field, or navigating off of the sun. These are all unknown things. There's a lot unknown about sea turtles. Here's an awesome video, though. I got to research in the Great Barrier Reef, and this is a really cool video on an island called Rain Island that is highly protected. Only a few select researchers are ever allowed to even go to Rain Island because it's such a special place on our planet. But this was from Guardian News. Great Barrier Reef drone footage allows researchers to count 64,000. Each of these little dots is a sea turtle all at once. Because it's such a special breeding ground for sea turtles, it's highly protected. So here's some of the dangers to sea turtles: the beach erosion, alteration of the beaches, the fake lighting that we add, fish nets, hunted by humans. I've seen videos where like Instagrammers are like stepping all over sea turtle nests for pictures, or people out in Hawaii, you'll see this every time you go. People are grabbing onto the sea turtle and riding it, and it's totally like, I think it's something like a $10,000 fine if someone photographs you and turns it in. It's a big deal. So dogs, cats, raccoons dig up the nest. It's all things that are hurting the survival rate of turtles. Here's a video from Ted Ed's survival of this sea turtle, which I think is pretty cool. Now one of my favorites, marine iguanas. These guys look so mean and scary and whatever, and I think they're just totally one of those misunderstood dragon looking guys that is so cool, but a lot of people are just really afraid of them. So the only one is in the Galapagos Islands. They generally have very black, or sometimes there's a few of them that have a red skin. It is really hot in the Galapagos Islands, so this dark skin just makes them even hotter. How do they survive like that? Well, this is an animal that needs to regulate its body temperature using the sun. And so it goes and sits in the sun and gets baking, cooking hot in the sun, and then it'll dive into the water to get its food, because it actually feasts on the algae and little grasses and things that grow. This is a total vegetarian animal. They only eat veggies, green stuff. And so they will dive down, and the diving actually cools them off, and then they will go back on land and get hot again. So they have a number of predators. They have hawks, racer snakes, owls, crabs, different feral animals that people have just released in the Galapagos, like rats, dogs, and cats that don't even belong there, will all hurt these guys' ability to live. Interesting. This video here is the coolest video. If you could watch it, I highly recommend this more than any other video that you would watch, is BBC Earth's Iguanas versus Snakes. It actually shows how the baby iguanas are born, and the very first task that they have is to run across the land to the rocks on the other side and make it past hundreds of racer snakes that are trying to eat them. So that's their first task that they have to do straight out of the egg. Marine iguanas, here they are just eating like the seagrass. They actually have this funny thing where they concentrate the salt and they shoot it out of their noses. So they also have a gland that concentrates the salt. Then, like this guy, they kind of do this sneezing action where they sneeze the white salt out. And if you ever see pictures of marine iguanas in groups, all of them are covered with like white salt that's dried all over their bodies because their friends have snotted white salt all over them. So it's kind of funny to see pictures of these guys together. Another funny thing is that they actually guard their areas and they're very, very territorial, but they're kind of like a gentlemanly, like guarding my territory. So two iguanas will go, and say two males will go in and they fight and they'll totally like battle it out, but not where they actually are hurting each other, more like a wrestling match. And the loser one will end up falling on his back and he'll hold the fallen position to say, okay, I concede, I lost. And the winner will actually stand above him, and his big reward is that he gets to nod his head like, yeah, I won. I won this fight. So, and then they both get up and they just go home. I mean, it's just kind of funny. It's like, as much as you can have a sweet iguana, here it is. They're vegetarians. They're not hurting anything. They don't even hurt each other. The sneezing the salt's a weird one for me though. Okay, so this is a video from BBC Earth swimming marine iguanas, that is really cool, that shows that as well. Okay, sea snakes. Sea snakes are descendants of lizards, but they have lost their legs, although a lot of them do have little hip bones in the back, like you see on land snakes. They actually have their nostrils on the top of their face, so they can do this action like that you see in the GIF, where the snake is going to the top and getting a quick breath. The nostrils are on top so that they can get a quick breath like that. So they have scales. Their lungs run. They have one lung and it goes like, it's like body length. It's like a really long lung so that they can have a lot of gas exchange through the whole thing. So they eat mostly fish or eggs or eels, and they also have a salt excreting gland. Here's a video from Deep Marine Scenes of Facts Marine Snakes that's really cool to watch, and I do recommend it. So sea snakes will generally only come together for reproduction. You can see a huge grouping of them here from the BBC adaptations of sea snakes. This might seem like your greatest fear, to be swimming in the middle of thousands of sea snakes, but actually, interestingly, they are exceptionally venomous. Very highly venomous creature. However, their mouths are so small that they would have a very hard time biting you. I have seen them a number of times, like in the Red Sea. I've seen them in Hawaii. And every sea snake that I've ever seen really just works to get away from you as fast as possible. And I've even seen some people like handle them before, and they don't even turn around and try to bite you. It's just like a wiggly motion, like, let me go. I've never seen them try to bite at a human at all. They are not considered any danger to humans because they are very non-aggressive, though the venom is there if somehow you manage to get bitten by one. But it would be totally safe to swim near them, around them, without it being a danger to you. So reproduction, there's three types that have oviparous, like they have eggs, and then there's the rest of them are viviparous, meaning they have a live birth. And they congregate together like this for mating. Interestingly, the males have not just one, but two penises, and they're called hemipenes, and they can use either one independently for mating, which makes them unique. And the gestation will last from 4 to 11 months. Most of the babies can swim at birth, meaning they come out of their mother or they come out of the egg, they're ready to go. So again, check out this video from the BBC if you have time. For some of you, that might be your greatest fear, but it's really a safe thing to be around them. Seabirds. So there's a lot of birds that live above the ocean or on the land near the ocean, but only one type, and I'm going to say the penguins, that really live a great deal of the time in the ocean. So out of 250 bird species out of 8,500 are what you would call seabirds. So we're going to talk about those next. Seabirds are actually homeothermic, meaning they need a constant body temperature, unlike the reptiles that need the sun. These guys they have a very high metabolism that keeps them at a constant body temperature. People totally underrate birds in general. They have excellent like sight, hearing. They have a large brain compared to their body as far as the weight goes. They have a 4-chambered heart, quick reflexes, and very muscular. So one of their adaptations for living in the sea area or within the sea is that they also have a salt gland. This usually presents on their beak. It'll make it look like some shorebirds like the gulls. They will actually always look like they have a runny, drippy, or wet beak because it's highly concentrated salt that is coming out of this gland and it's meant to be. Some other seabirds will actually sneeze it out, not unlike the iguanas. So we're going to go over some of those shorebirds now. So this one is called the oyster catcher. There's this cool video from Africa Gomez, oyster catcher cracking a mussel. They have a very sharp pointed beak, and they will actually use that to peck and pry at bivalves like little clams in the sand. They'll actually carry them around until they can eventually crack it open. And if you watch this video, you'll see it quickly crack this bivalve open and eat the food inside. The plovers are really, really cute. They also run around and eat little mollusks and things in the sand. And these ones, this is a cool video from my little Yorkshire garden. Ruddy turnstones pushing pebbles looking for food. They literally are called turnstones because they go around flipping stones over, turning them over, and looking for various like debris, decaying things, plant life, little insects, whatever that they can grab. Sandpipers are these birds. They're also looking for the same type of crustaceans and mollusks, and they run up and down as the waves come in and out. And curlews, which have a curved beak, and they use them like tweezers to actually pull different shellfish from inside of their burrows. So they use it to extract it. The avocets and the stilts. These are avocets, and this is a stilt. So they have long, slender legs, and the same thing with their beak for pulling little like fish and whatever swimmers they can find in the water out. Specifically, the avocets will actually swing their beak back and forth in the water to try to like filter feed. And you can see how it's kind of scoopy shaped on their beak, and they will kind of like scoopy swing it in and out of the water to see what they can find. So herons, egrets, and bitterns. This is a heron here that's eating a fish in this gift. This is an egret, and this is a bittern. These guys are very widespread and successful. I live inland from the beach, and I've even noticed for a few years, egrets were coming all the way inland from the beach to hunt out here. So that like in my area, they were hunting more in a desert region, like the lizards and things like large insects that they could find. But near the beach, small fish, little baby fish, they'll be looking for tiny mollusks, and they essentially stand there at the beach wading through and waiting for their prey to move and get scared, and then they'll reach down and grab it really fast. This is the gulls and their relatives. So notice I'm saying gulls and not seagulls. They are not called seagulls. However, in pop culture, everyone tends to call them seagulls, but that's actually incorrect. They are called the gulls, only the gulls. So gulls have webbed feet and oil glands for waterproofing their feathers, and they are not selective feeders. You've probably seen something like this before where they've actually stolen food from somebody on the beach while you've been there. So their relatives include the terns, the skuas, the jaegers, the skimmers, and the alcids, and we will talk about that. But for now, let's talk about gull babies. So this is a gull baby that is maybe a few months old at this point, maybe a month old or so. You can see it has a black beak, darker feathers for hiding. This is like a camouflage coloration. And this is what a not newly hatched, they do get smaller than this, and I have a video that shows that, but this is probably a month-old gull. When they get a little bit older, but nowhere near like an adult, this is maybe like the equivalent of a human 8-year-old, you have a black dot on the beak. This has some gray, dark coloring, is still freckles in the white part of their feathers, and you can see that the gray area still has a lot of white intermixed into it. Then you're talking about this one and being like a year-old gull, probably year and a half, that there's still a little bit of freckling in the white parts, still not super cleaned up, gray parts of the feathers, and a black dot on their beak. This is a full adult. This full adult has, the white is very sharp, the gray is very sharp and pronounced, and some black tail feathers. You'll notice the beak has turned very yellow with a red dot. Red dot specifically, red is a color that birds, like if you think about like chickens, if they see red, they will all immediately run to feeding frenzy, peck the red dot. So there is a red dot on gulls, adult gulls, and they will return to their baby, and their baby, as soon as the baby sees the red dot, the baby will peck on the beak immediately on the parent that says, I'm hungry, give me your food. And that process of having its beak pecked actually causes mom or dad, because they both take care of the baby, to puke their food and vomit it, and the baby then picks up the vomit and eats it. And then the baby will peck some more and say, I know you got more in there. And then it'll force mom, dad, whatever, to puke again. So be glad you're not a gull. The most common gull in Southern California is called the Western gull. There's some areas where they are actually protected because of how much trash and garbage they clean up from the beach. So you're not allowed to hurt them in some places. They're very noisy and aggressive. What they will do in a lot of cases is this behavior, and I recommend watching this video. This is from Ryan Grippo, Seagulls Dropping Clams for a Meal. I've seen this behavior down in Mexico where the gulls will pick up a mussel clam bivalve and they'll carry it way high in the air, and then they'll drop it suddenly. And dropping it like that cracks it open, and they go over and they'll eat the mussel inside. I've also heard reports of them doing this to like rats, mice, things like that, different mammals that they find and want to eat, to kill the prey before they eat it. They'll even eat like other gull babies and eggs at times. So people tend to think of them as being very aggressive with the food, which reminds me that they love to get together. They are highly gregarious. They are very social and love to be around each other, but they kind of remind me of the family that like thinks they wanted to get together, but then they're all just like fighting over food this at like the same time. So it's like they're not getting along. They just want to be together though, and they make these huge colonies. So both sexes assist in taking care of the baby after it has hatched out and while it's incubating. Mom and dad will both take turns. Here's a video from John Mount Seagull feeding its young by Monterey Bay. And notice they call it a seagull. It's actually called a gull. But you can see this baby squawking at its parent and then pecking on the beak until it feeds it. So I do recommend that one. The female can actually lay 2 to 3 eggs at a time and 3 to 4 clutches nests a year. And she can immediately lay a new nest as soon as the babies are gone. Only about 1 in every 5 hatchlings are actually surviving to adulthood, which is about at 8 weeks. Okay, so they're relatives of gulls. The first one is the tern. This one looks awesome. This is a really cool bird. If you see like really sharp wings, really cool tail feathers, very graceful, aerobatic, like divers, just awesome. They will dive into the water. They'll steal food. They also like to nest in the millions and get together. I really like this bird because I feel like I can relate to it. It does not like darkness. It wants to be in the light all the time. So it will actually fly. Terns will fly from north of the Arctic Circle to Antarctica so that they can spend 10 months of the year in regions of the world that have zero darkness. That's crazy to me. But it's really awesome. They just really are light seeking. So there's the skuas and the Jaegers. So these are very, very aggressive birds that will steal food from other animals. They're just omnivores. They'll eat anything they can find out at sea. The skimmers, also called the scissorbills, these have a longer bottom beak than the top beak, and a lot of times their beaks will cross over each other. And they will go and fly along the water. Here's a video by Go Trails Black Skimmer Bird catching fish over the water surface and the Cornell Lab of Ornithology Black Skimmer Bird. What they will do, and you can see it in this video by Go Trails, they will actually skim the water surface with their lower beak, and then all the little fish in the water will be like, oh, an insect came because it disturbed the water. I'm going to go over there. And so the fish will kind of come from far away and congregate in that area. And then this bird will follow along the exact same line that it skimmed, but in the opposite direction, and grab up those fish that got fooled by its trick. Another relative of the gulls are the alcids, which are the auks, puffins, and murres. Here's a murre, baby murre, and then we have an auk, and then a puffin here. The puffins look a lot like gulls, they don't look a lot like gulls. They look like penguins, and a lot of people get them mixed up or think that they are related to penguins, and they are not. So this is a moment to talk about convergent evolution. In convergent evolution, two organisms that are not related but lived in maybe the same area, so they had to solve similar problems, they end up coming up with similar solutions. So maybe they look alike, but they're not even related at all. So say they needed to camouflage, so they're like, oh, it makes sense to have a darker back and a lighter underneath. This is the same plan that a lot of fish came up with, and a lot of sharks and things like that use. So they have this counter shading. So say they needed to paddle well in the water. So they ended up having webbed back feet that are like really strong and sturdy. Say they needed to solve a problem of warmth. So they have really thick feathers, or maybe oil covered feathers, so that they don't get water next to their skin. Just because they came up with similar ideas does not mean they are related, and these two are definitely not related, and that is an example of convergent evolution. Two animals that are not related that just solved a problem in a similar way. So the alcids specifically will nest over dense cliffside colonies, and both parents mama will lay one egg, and both parents care for it. They will generally mate for life. Young murres, here's a young murre. Isn't that the cutest? Young murres will just go and jump in the water, and their parents will chase it like, what are you doing? And then the parents will help the young murre learn how to hunt. Puffins are actually totally different. Puffins will dote over their baby for about 6 weeks. The parents will both take care of it, and they'll fly up to 30 miles a day looking for good fishing grounds. They can hold their breath for a whole minute and dive 40 meters. That's amazing that they can do that. And they'll really take care of their baby for about 6 weeks. When 6 weeks are up, both parents just walk away, and baby either figures it out or it's not. So it's like a lot of doting care, and then you're on your own, kid. All right, so pelicans and their relatives. So pelicans, gannets, boobies, cormorants, also called the shags, darters, frigate birds, and tropic birds. So they all have webs between their four toes. They have a hooked upper mandible, which I put in this GIF because you can see the hooked upper mandible. I kind of think you can see it in this GIF as well. This is the blue-footed booby. They're doing a dance here. where they are showing off their feet, and the male will come up to the female and say, hey, look at my feet, aren't they awesome? And look at my wings, they can do this. Isn't that really cool? And she'll kind of dance with him and see if his dance is okay. And sometimes other boobies will come up and they will also start dancing in this, but these two have already like made a connection, eye contact, and they will actually stay together usually and mate. So they're often brightly colored and cool birds. So here in Southern California, we have the California brown pelican. They have a gular, which is a throat pouch like this at the bottom. So this one literally just ate a pigeon in this GIF. So they have a throat gular pouch that is very elastic, very stretchable. It looks like that pigeon is going to bust through it, but it's not. It's very thick. And they will generally eat fish, but they're kind of willing to eat anything. They prefer areas that tend to be warmer. The boobies, like we said before, they will do an elaborate mating dance. If you'd like to see that awesome dance, here's a National Geographic Wild, the blue-footed boobies mating dance, and you can see how that goes. So interesting, they will only lay a number of eggs that are reflective of how good the conditions are. If there's not very much food out there, the mom and dad will be like, let's just lay one egg. And if there's a ton of food out there, they'll lay more. Cormorants, also called the shags, they lack oil glands. They have a very sturdy body, and these guys can swim very deep in the water. They can hold their breath for like 2 minutes. They're not graceful flyers, but they're great swimmers. 2 minutes, they can go under the water and they can dive 150 feet. I have actually seen these diving before when I was very deep in the water. I thought I was going crazy because I was like, that was a bird. And then I learned more about cormorants and how deep they can dive. It's kind of awesome. So this is a video from Michael Stone, flightless cormorant diving and looking for food. Then there's frigate birds. Frigate birds have like a 2-meter wingspan. They can't waterproof their feathers. They make this giant throat bubble to show off, the males will, to the females. They will also make a really cool nest. This is called the BBC Earth Bizarre Mating Ritual of the Frigate Birds. The males will make the nest and they will take the females on a field trip to their nest to show them, look at how awesome my nest is. And she doesn't think it's awesome enough. She tells them to go kick rocks and she goes and looks for another male. So the male has to both have a great throat and also has to have an awesome nest that he's made. So this one will also skim the surface with their bill. They'll pursue and attack birds in the air. They will steal other males like sticks and nesting material in the air to steal it from them. They're very resourceful. Okay, the tube noses. Tube noses are the petrels, albatross, and shearwaters. They actually have a tube on top of their nose. And scientists aren't totally sure why it's such a long tube. They don't know if it's for smelling or a better place to like get rid of, like make sure salt doesn't come deep into their nostrils, but they will also secrete salt. These guys, the albatross, will actually go years before returning to land. When they take off from their first nest, they can travel over the ocean and land on the ocean, but travel over the ocean and only paddle through water, but not touch land for many years. This is a very intriguing bird. So I have this video here about how they're trying to save them from National Geographic, Saving Albatross Chicks from Tsunamis and Rising Seas. And this other video from BBC Earth, Albatross Uses Nostrils to Fly. So they are actually have a huge nesting site in Kauai, and you can actually safely go see them there, and it's really cool. So albatross, they are the largest living bird on Earth at 11.5 feet. There are some that are gone from land. Like there's one that there was a video I was watching, 6 years was gone and came back and hardly even knew how to walk on land, had paddled in water, had flown, but forgot how to walk and was 6 years old. They only come to land to breed, and that's it. They have an elaborate courtship display, which you can see here. National Geographic, albatross's lifelong bond begins with an elaborate courtship. So the male and female will come together, and when they decide they're going to pair bond, they will have a secret dance that is just between the two of them. But as I said earlier, sometimes they are out at sea for 6 years. So their mate didn't show up in, say, Kauai, say it's landing on Kauai, didn't show up this year. So what is, like, say it's a female, what is she going to do? Some of them will just go mate with another one, even though they have this lifelong bond with the other. Now, if their main mate that they have pair bonded with, if that mate is there and other birds, they will always go with their pair bonded one. But if the one that they're pair bonded to did not show up for that breeding season, and they did, there are incidents where they have seen them breeding with other ones, but generally they are monogamous for life. Okay, so interesting. You can deep dive into this bird and learn a lot more. But even one of the ones that I was looking up, they noted that it had flown 5,000 miles in 2 weeks. There's a lot of humans that would be uncomfortable driving a car 5,000 miles in 2 weeks. It's just really interesting. A bird that is not my favorite is called a petrel. Petrels just really will pull apart and eat everything. That is why this one has blood all over its face, because it has just devoured something. I don't know what, but they've been known to eat penguins alive. They'll eat live fish. They'll eat other birds. They're just a very stout, sturdy bird that will very aggressively go after food. And now penguins. Penguins are the one bird that I would say is truly a marine bird because it spends so much time in the water. They can have bursts of 20 miles per hour. Only 2 of the 17 actually live in the Arctics. The rest live in places like South America or Africa or on the bottom of New Zealand. So there's lots of other penguins that live in places other than the Arctics. They can have up to 80 feathers per inch in a very streamlined body. They leap out of the water to come and breathe and to exit the water. They eat fish, squid, krill, and they're hunted by leopard seals. Look at this one stepping on this seal. The seal does not like that at all and is wailing like that was the worst thing ever to ruin its sunbathing. They are also hunted by killer whales. So with penguins, a really cool version of the penguin, look at them jumping out of the water, and some of them are not making it, but some of them do. This video from BBC Earth, the Emperor Penguin, greatest wildlife show on Earth. It's so interesting. The male and female, after they breed, she will actually walk way far inland, really far inland, to lay her egg. And she does this for 2 reasons. She does it so that when the ice breaks and predators and whatever, she is not near the edge with a little baby. That's number 1. Number 2, another reason that she goes way far inland is because she wants to make sure that as she'll lay her egg in the freezing cold middle of winter. And from there, the egg will incubate by dad. Dad actually incubates the egg for 2 months. While dad is incubating the egg under this flap under his skin, it's no longer winter anymore. It's gone on for 2 months into spring, and the glaciers start to annually melt back. And as they're annually melting back, she wants to make sure that dad and baby don't just fall into the sea. So her original egg laying is way far back. And after she lays the egg, dad follows her. After she lays the egg, she immediately has spent so much of her body energy on that egg that she's out. She lays the egg, she drops it, and she's like, now dad's got to care for it, and I need to go get fish to take care of my own body. So she immediately leaves and goes and feeds herself and makes that long journey back to the water. Dad stays with the egg. He fasts. He fully doesn't eat for the full 2 months. Very interesting. Just stays with the baby. When mom is done feeding, she will actually bring back a full crop to baby and to dad, and she will actually feed some of her food to the baby, and then dad will leave and go to, she'll watch the baby, and dad will leave and go and feed, and it goes back and forth like this until the baby is able to fledge and care for itself. So that sums up our marine reptiles and birds chapter.